Walk onto any half-decent forecourt in the UK right now, and you'll see it before the salesman even opens his mouth. A little cluster of cars parked round the back, away from the main display, half hidden behind the valeting bay. Nobody's polishing those ones. Nobody's put a big yellow price sticker in the window shouting reduced. They just sit there, week after week, quietly losing money for whoever owns the finance on them. Ask any independent dealer from Kent to Cumbria what those cars have in common, and you'll get the same answer, usually with a sigh attached. Batteries. Here's the thing nobody saw coming a few years back. Everyone assumed electric cars would be the future-proof investment, the smart buy, the one thing on the forecourt that would hold its money because, well, it's new technology, it's clean, it's got a badge that says electric, and people love that. Except used buyers in this country turned out to be a lot more cynical than manufacturers hoped. They started asking about battery health before they asked about the leather seats. They started Googling EV battery replacement cost in the car park before they'd even test-driven the thing. And once that question got asked enough times, some very specific cars became genuinely difficult to shift, no matter how low the price dropped. Auto Trader's own data has said it plainly. Used electric values have fallen by something like a quarter in a single year, and EVs are sitting on forecourts for roughly twice as long as an equivalent petrol car before anyone bites. One trade body boss went as far as calling the used EV market close to what an economist would label a market failure. That's not a YouTuber exaggerating for clicks, that's the people who run car auctions saying it out loud. There's also the manufacturer side of this, which most buyers never think about but every dealer feels in their bones. New EVs are still being heavily discounted right now, thousands knocked off list price just to hit zero-emission sales quotas set by the government. Every time that happens on a showroom floor, it quietly murders the value of every used equivalent sitting 2 streets away with a private owner. You didn't do anything wrong. Your car didn't get worse overnight. The market just moved the goalposts under your feet, and nobody rang to warn you first. So today we're doing something a bit different. We're not ranking the coolest cars, or the fastest, or the ones you'd actually want on your driveway. We're ranking the ones that UK dealers dread taking in part exchange, the ones where the trade price guide practically laughs at you. 5 real cars, ranked from bad to genuinely radioactive, starting with the one that's merely a headache and ending with the one that makes a dealer's stomach drop the second it rolls onto the ramp. Stick around for the last one, because it involves a British badge, a fire recall, and a number so brutal it made national news over here. Right, let's start with the least offensive of the bunch, because even worst has degrees. Vauxhall Corsa E. Number 5 is the Vauxhall Corsa E. Built from 2020 through to 2023 at Vauxhall's Zaragoza plant, on the same underpinnings as the Peugeot E208, it packed a 100 kilowatts motor, good for about 136 horsepower, fed by a 50 kilowatt-hour battery pack, giving an official range in the low 200s of miles that shrank fast in a British winter with the heater running. On paper, it should have been a solid little seller. It was the electric version of Britain's best-selling Super Mini for decades, after all. In practice, it's become a textbook case of value collapse. Some tracking sites put its 12-month depreciation north of 50%, which for a car that started around 30 grand new is an eye-watering number. A 3-year-old Corsa E with 30,000 miles on the clock can be sitting at roughly half its original sticker price, and dropping. Why does a dealer wince at these? Partly it's the sheer number of new EV discounts flooding the market. Vauxhall itself slashed thousands off the new Corsa Electric and its sibling the Mokka E to hit sales targets, and every time that happens, the used ones parked 2 miles down the road at an independent forecourt lose value overnight, through no fault of their own. Partly it's the badge. A Corsa is a budget car. Buyers shopping in that bracket are the most price-sensitive in the whole market, and they're the ones least likely to gamble on battery health with no warranty cushion left. One thing you'll see repeated in owner forums and comment sections under any Corsa E video. People asking, but what happens when the battery needs replacing? Is it even worth fixing? Dealers hear that question constantly, and most of them don't have a confident answer, so the car sits. There's a strange irony sitting underneath all of this. To drive, the Corsa E is actually a perfectly likable little car. Quiet, quick enough off the line to surprise a hot hatch at the lights, cheap to run if you can charge at home, but cheap to run isn't the same as cheap to sell. A dealer doesn't care how nice the steering feels. He cares how many days it sits under a tarpaulin before someone finally makes an offer. And right now, for a Corsa E, that number is climbing. DS3 Crossback E-Tense. Number 4, moving up the unsellable ladder, is the DS3 Crossback E-Tense. Built by the French luxury offshoot of Citroën from 2019, officially on sale in the UK from early 2020, sharing that same 100 kilowatts, 136 horsepower motor and 50 kilowatt-hour pack as the Corsa E underneath, because underneath the fancy trim, these things were siblings. 0 to 62 in 9 seconds, a real-world range that owners on forums regularly reported closer to 150 miles than the claimed figure once you factored in a cold morning and the M25 at 70. New, the top ultra-prestige trim was pushing £35,000, which is proper premium hatchback money. Owners have reported depreciation of around a third in the first year alone, some describing losing £12,000 off a £36,000 car before the first service was even due. That's the kind of number that makes a dealer's part exchange offer look almost insulting, and it's exactly why so many of these end up privately advertised instead, because the trade simply won't pay what the owner thinks it's worth. Here's the twist though, and it's one worth mentioning, because it corrects a common assumption. Mechanically, the E-Tense powertrain is actually one of the more dependable electric setups from that era, most of its issues being software glitches sorted by an update rather than anything requiring a spanner. There are a couple of known niggles worth flagging mind. Owners report the flush door handles are prone to failure, springing shut, or refusing to present themselves at exactly the wrong moment, and there's a documented onboard charger fault affecting the wider PSA electric platform, the same underpinnings shared with the Corsa E and Peugeot's E208. But by and large, this isn't a car falling apart mechanically. The problem isn't reliability, it's the badge and the stigma. DS never built the dealer network, the brand recognition, or the resale confidence that Audi or even Vauxhall enjoys. Most people in Britain still couldn't tell you DS is Citroen's premium spin-off, and a car nobody can place is a hard car to value with any confidence. Ask anyone who's tried trading one in, and the story's the same. Punchy little car, comfortable interior, genuinely plush for the class, drives nicely, but the second word DS appears on a valuation form, the number drops. Reddit threads on UK car forums are full of exactly this complaint. People stunned their lovely French EV is worth less than a 5-year-old Fiesta, and dealers privately admitting they'd rather not stock the badge at all if they can help it, because it just doesn't turn heads on the forecourt the way a German 3-letter badge does. Mini Electric, first generation. Number 3, and things get properly ugly here, is the original Mini Electric. Sold in the UK from March 2020, this was BMW's first proper crack at an all-electric Mini, using a 135 kilowatts motor, about 181 horsepower, which sounds punchy because it is. This thing is genuinely quick off the line. The catch was the battery, just 32.6 kilowatt hours usable, giving an official range barely cracking 140 miles, and real owners reporting more like 100 to 110 in typical mixed UK driving, less again with the aircon on or motorway miles racking up. That tiny battery is the whole story here. By the time 2024 and 2025 rolled around, and rivals were offering 2, sometimes 3 times the range for similar money, the original Mini Electric's value cratered. Depreciation estimates on these swing wildly depending who you ask, anywhere from the mid-30s up past 60% in 3 years, which puts it among the very worst performers in the entire electric segment sold in Britain. Production numbers were never huge either. Mini built it in relatively low volume compared to their petrol range at the Oxford plant, which you'd think would help scarcity value. It hasn't, because unlike a rare classic, a scarce short-range EV isn't desirable, it's just inconvenient. Talk to anyone in the trade about these, and you'll hear the same phrase over and over. Great round town, useless for anything else. That's basically become the epitaph for the car. One recurring theme in comment sections under Mini Electric review videos is buyers asking whether the range figure is a joke, and owners jumping in to confirm, painfully, that yes, on a cold January morning with the school run and a supermarket trip, you can watch the battery percentage fall like it's got a leak in it. That's not the kind of word of mouth that helps resale. What makes this one sting a bit more than the others is that Mini as a brand usually holds its value brilliantly. The petrol Cooper has been a resale darling for the better part of 2 decades, the kind of car finance companies love because it barely loses money. So when the electric version turns up on a valuation sheet worth barely a third of what a comparable petrol Mini would fetch at the same age and mileage, it genuinely throws dealers, because everything in their experience of the badge says it shouldn't behave that way. It's a Mini in every way except the one that actually decides resale value in this country, and that gap between reputation and reality is exactly why this one sits unsold longer than it has any right to. Nissan Leaf, first generation. Number 2, and now we're properly into the cars that make an auctioneer's face drop, is the original Nissan Leaf, specifically those first generation cars built from 2011 through roughly 2012 to 2013 before the mild refresh. This was the pioneer, the car that arguably kicked off mainstream EVs in Britain, and it's aged into a cautionary tale. Power was modest, around 80 kilowatts, roughly 107 horsepower, paired with a 24 kilowatt-hour battery pack that critically had no proper liquid cooling, just passive air cooling, which sounds fine until you remember these batteries were sitting through a decade or more of British summers and winters with zero thermal management protecting them. The result, and this is well documented across owner forums going back over a decade, is chronic, visible battery degradation. Owners watched capacity bars physically disappear off the dashboard display, one by one, range shrinking from a claimed 100-odd miles down to 60, 50, sometimes less, on the earliest, highest mileage examples. Nissan eventually faced enough pressure that they extended battery capacity warranty coverage after a class action settlement, which tells you how widespread the complaints were. Here's a stat that should end the argument for any dealer still on the fence. Some of these early Leafs have depreciated by around 50%, and in the words used repeatedly by people in the motor trade, Nissan's own dealers don't even want them on the lot. Replacing that original battery pack can run into several £1,000s, and for a car that might now be worth $2,000 or $3,000 all in, that maths simply doesn't work for anybody. It's the automotive equivalent of a phone with a battery that won't hold a charge past lunchtime, except you can't just buy a new phone for 300 quid. You're stuck negotiating with a specialist EV garage instead. Small wonder these get quietly moved on through trade-only auctions rather than displayed proudly out front. There's a bitter kind of irony in the Leaf's story too, because it deserves credit it rarely gets. This was the car that proved, back when most manufacturers thought electric cars were a niche experiment, that ordinary British families would actually buy one and drive it every day. It sold in real numbers. It built the charging habits and the confidence that every EV since has benefited from. It just happened to do all of that with first-generation battery chemistry that nobody had properly stress-tested against a decade of British weather. Owners on forums going back to 2015 were already comparing notes on which bars had dropped off their dashboard display, years before battery degradation became a phrase the wider public even understood. The Leaf was the guinea pig, and guinea pigs, however important their contribution, rarely get top dollar at resale. Jaguar I-Pace, which brings us to the top of the pile. Number 1. The car that isn't just hard to sell, it's become something close to a symbol of everything that went wrong with early premium EVs in this country. The Jaguar I-Pace. Launched in 2018, on sale properly in the UK from 2019, this was Jaguar's big swing, their answer to Tesla, built to prove a proper British luxury brand could do electric performance, and mechanically it delivered. Twin motors putting out roughly 294 kilowatts, near enough 400 horsepower, a 90 kilowatt-hour battery, 0 to 60 in around 4.5 seconds. It genuinely drove beautifully, and reviewers loved it at launch. It even won a stack of Car of the Year awards. This is the bit that makes the story sting, because it wasn't a bad car. It's arguably a brilliant one that the market simply turned its back on. Depreciation on the I-Pace has been described, plainly, as a disaster. Figures show it losing roughly 30% of its value in the first year alone, and by year 5, something close to 67% gone. One widely reported estimate suggested UK I-Pace owners collectively lost somewhere in the region of £430 million in value across the fleet. That's not a typo, that's British I-Pace owners as a group, watching nearly £500 million evaporate. Why so brutal? A combination of things stacking on top of each other. Early cars suffered documented issues, front motor mount failures, battery cell faults, occasional software freakouts that left owners stranded, and there was a recall linked to battery fire risk on 2019 models, which is precisely the kind of headline that lodges in a buyer's memory long after the fix has been issued. Add rapid advances from rivals offering more range and better software. Add the simple fact that Jaguar's own dealer network was going through years of turmoil and brand repositioning, and you get a used market that's terrified of the badge. Forum posts from I-Pace owners describe dealers lowballing trade-in offers so aggressively that private sale, even at a loss, still nets 50 to 70% more money. One frequent comment under I-Pace retrospective videos sums it up better than any spec sheet could. People saying it's heartbreaking, because to drive, it's still one of the most underrated EVs ever made, and yet nobody in the trade will touch it with a barge pole. So there you have it. 5 real cars sat on real UK forecourts in 2026, ranked from awkward to nearly unsellable, and every single one of them electric. That's not a coincidence, and it's not us picking on EVs for the sake of a controversial video. It's what the actual auction data, the actual dealer complaints, and the actual owner forums are all saying at the same time. New EV discounting keeps hammering used values. Batteries age in ways buyers still don't fully trust. and badges that don't carry decades of resale confidence get punished hardest when the market gets nervous. Here's the twist worth sitting with though. Every single car on this list was in its own way a genuinely clever, well-engineered, occasionally brilliant machine when it left the factory. The I-Pace won awards, proper ones, against petrol and diesel rivals with decades more development behind them. The Mini Electric is properly fun to drive, arguably more fun than the petrol version round town. Even the humble Corsa E does exactly what a city car should do, cheaply and quietly. None of them are unsellable because they're bad cars. They're unsellable because trust in a used electric powertrain hasn't caught up with the technology yet, and trust, unlike horsepower, can't be written on a spec sheet. Think about what that actually means for a second. A dealer looking at a £50,000 Jaguar, reduced to 15, isn't looking at a bad product. He's looking at a market that got scared faster than the engineering ever justified. Battery tech has moved on leaps and bounds since these cars launched, and thermal management, cell chemistry, software calibration, all of it is dramatically better than it was even 5 years ago. But perception moves slower than technology, and right now perception is what sets the price on a forecourt, not the spreadsheet. If you're in the market for a used EV right now, that's actually good news buried inside a scary video title. It means there are genuinely excellent cars sitting there, priced like problems, going for a fraction of what they're worth to drive, because the crowd is scared off by a word on a warranty document. Do your homework on battery health, get a proper inspection, and you might just be the one person on your street who worked that out before everyone else caught up. Now here's where you come in. Have you owned one of these 5, or nearly bought one, and backed out at the last second because of exactly this reputation? Drop it in the comments, because honestly, the stories underneath these videos are usually better than the video itself. And if you want more of this, more real numbers from real UK forecourts, instead of manufacturer marketing, you know what to do. Stick around, there's plenty more where this came from.